Chris Daly and Mike Brosey from Primary Intelligence. Today's webinar is titled The Sad Story of Intelligence That Never Made a Difference. And I think what you're going to find from us today is that we have a very keen interest in making sure that intelligence is effective, that it's not just an exercise, that we're not just running on the wheel trying to make it go, but that this idea of effective intelligence can be gained within just about any company. There are some very interesting things that we've found in our work that help to increase the chances of that happening. This is a good opportunity for us to share some of what we consider to be best practices. I'm going to go ahead and do a little housekeeping before we go any further. The idea is that we want you to be able to communicate with us. As we go along through the presentation, you can use the question and answer box on your screen. You can enter the question and submit. We're able to see that as we're doing the webinar. If we're not making ourselves clear, or if you have a thought that might amplify, feel free to give us that information. We will work to incorporate your ideas into the webinar. Now, I know we've just got through with a number of poll questions, but this one really, I think, will drive home a couple of the ideas that we might be talking about right here. As we talk about effective intelligence, there are things that get in the way of our intelligence being used to its maximum benefit within the company. So if you'll just one more time indulge us and give us the ideas from you that, what is it that's causing the undermining of the effectiveness of the use of intelligence in your company. As you go with this poll, we'll leave it open for just a few more seconds. We'll go quickly. Just to give you a little bit of an introduction, I'm in the marketing department and have enjoyed my time here at Primary Intelligence. Mike is an account executive working with a number of companies throughout the United States and globally, in fact.
Yeah, one of the top sales guys, and just really enjoying working with a lot of these large organizations. And I love the topic that we're going to be talking about today, because there's so many that I've seen organizations that either buy research or do some research in-house, and too often it sits on the shelf, and very little action is taken from that information, and they end up being a customer that kind of sits there and does nothing for quite some period of time. And those that actually really get in and use the data and apply it to their strategic focus, you can see some great things happen and some incredible competitive advantage that's taking place there. So I'm excited to kind of go through this whole presentation with you guys and also answer some of your questions as you have them.
Fair enough. All right, let's go ahead and close that down and see where we are. It looks like just about everybody has participated. We have 65% of the people saying too many initiatives, not enough people, which isn't surprising. I think there's always a resource shortage in just about any area of the company. But another one, 45%, our intelligence often doesn't lead to results. That's interesting to me too. That people are, there is at least some feeling among our attendees today that they're doing work that may not end up making a difference in their company. So let's go ahead and talk about our topic today. So, listening to Accenture in a study that they conducted of a little over 1,000 managers in the U.S. and U.K., they want to tell you that the managers are saying that necessary intelligence is not accessible to them, that much of what they obtain is worthless. In fact, most of the things that they talk about in this study are the fact that the intelligence isn't what they're looking for, or they're not able to get to the information that would be necessary. Either it's not in a place where they can find it, or, as the case may be, they don't even know that it exists, or some departments are not being forthright in sharing that information with them, which is a problem. If you can't get that, it's going to be ineffective. Well, one of the things that we found is a big problem, this goes back over nearly a decade of history in intelligence services, is there's just simply a glut of information. In fact, that was something that was mentioned, I think, in our earlier in the question. And the idea is that you get way too many things happening. You get to the point where the information is just surrounding you all the time, and pretty soon people don't know how to interact with this data. What is it that's going to cause people to make a difference in their decision making? People become information blind and very frustrated at times, and that's I think one of the most severe problems in the intelligence field. Well, let's talk about what makes intelligence effective, just to kind of set the table here. I think there are three things that have to come through very strongly. One is the intelligence, in order to be effective, needs to strengthen your company's position. Things like value proposition, what's the competition doing, these types of questions have to be answered through the intelligence. If your company is not stronger for it, why are you doing it? Second, intelligence that discovers new markets, very valuable. This is something that's going to help you to build market share, help you perhaps help your decision makers to understand where opportunity exists that they had not seen. Really listening to the ground. I've heard some crazy stories about how small services within a company become large solutions just because of a small intelligence initiative that dug up some information.
I think it's important there also to make sure that you're capturing, with that discovering new markets, you're not just discovering whole new areas to jump into, but different products and services that can be offered back to the client base. And hopefully your intelligence is capturing that. And through many of the services that we offer, we can get to those kind of data points for many of our clients.
Okay. And then intelligence which helps to develop new products, services, and solutions. If you have intelligence that accomplishes these three goals, I think you're in a spot where you're going to accomplish some very powerful things with intelligence. If your intelligence is more of a, if I will, a reactionary type of intelligence, why'd they do that? How'd that happen? Where'd those people go? If you don't have a strategy around it, you really are going to end up doing a lot of busy work that may or may not meet the needs of anybody and then never receives the buy-in it should. Well, just quickly, some very common things that reduce the effectiveness of intelligence. You have problems with indecisions, delays, timeliness, misunderstandings, communication, and lack of acceptance. And we're going to talk about each of these separately. The problem of indecision. Nobody knows what they want to know. That's interesting. And I've seen this come out of too many executive boardrooms, and even at the VP level. People know they want to know something, but they can't narrow it down to what they want to accomplish with the data. If you can't prioritize your data needs, how can you actually carry them out to a measurable effectiveness?
Yeah, you got to look at the end result. It's not ends to an end. It's ends to a means. You should have a means of what you're trying to accomplish, so that as you're going out and capturing the data, if you find things, you can say, "This is what we found. This is the change we need to make."
Absolutely. So the second idea would be that after indecision, we have to work with timeliness. How many times has somebody requested a bit of information, or you've thought up a program that would get information to somebody, but by the time you have the answer to a question, that question's long gone, and there's 3 questions that have come and gone since then. So timeliness is a big, important factor. In fact, if you were to think about a situation where intelligence is not just interesting, not just beneficial, but essential, in the military, you've got somebody looking at a building wondering, are there bad guys in that building, and what are they armed with? You can't wait 3 weeks for the intel to come back on that in a nice written report and what have you. You have to have the right kind of information at the right time that you can digest. And too many times, questions come up that can't be answered in that short of a time, and one way or another, the intelligence division is looked at as ineffective.
Right. I think that comes down to the play of, too often the question comes out, and you've got to have that information now, and it's not always that easy to capture real quickly. I think it's very important to have some kind of a program running on an ongoing basis that's capturing that kind of information, so when that question comes up, you have those answers right then at hand.
The funny part about misunderstanding, and this is kind of a tragic story that we hear throughout competitive intelligence and even marketing departments in general, the use of business intelligence, market intelligence, sales intelligence, competitive intelligence. It's funny that in your world, you can divide your intelligence into some very interesting reports. You can segment ideas. You can create beautiful, you can take the effort to create beautiful bits of information that have a great purpose. And when you hand them to the VP or the C-level, they don't understand it, and it doesn't have any bearing on what they're looking for. And it's the fact that their world doesn't look like your world. And unfortunately, this has been one of the greatest causes of frustration personally that I've seen with intelligence people, is how come my stuff isn't getting the recognition it deserves.
Right.
If they had acted on this, if they would appreciate what I have done, they would be making better decisions. Well, at the same time, these people that are responsible for those decisions are saying, sure would like to have something that answers the questions that I have right now.
Right.
Or have it put into a format or on time or what have you that I could use. And in fact, in those organizations where I think that the intelligence people have the greatest satisfaction, it's those people that have learned to speak the executive speak and understand the executive world. In fact, we'll talk about a gentleman we know who's moved from company to company until he found that situation as we get through later in the webinar. And I think it's been a bold move on his part to walk away from what I thought were very good positions to be in a company where he knew he would make a difference because he was able to understand them and they were able to understand him. Communication. Boy, can you imagine, we did that slide with the glut of information, and there's so much information passing by people. I mean, not even intelligence, but if you're just talking about emails and news reports and financial reports and information bubbling up through any number of divisional managers and what have you, how do you get your information to make a sound in all of that? And how do you get those pipelines built so your intelligence gets to the right people? Big question. If you can't do it, again, ineffective intelligence. And then finally, acceptance. And this is kind of one of the biggest problems that exists that, boy, I don't know, we don't yet have a 100% foolproof answer to this one either. And that is, if your executives don't believe in intelligence, it kind of doesn't matter what you do.
True. I mean, it comes down to really, you've got to find executive individuals and or change their beliefs that this can really make a change, make a difference, make an impact, and really give you competitive advantage that's going to really generate more revenue down the road.
Okay. I think it's a very interesting phenomenon to watch executives and find out the reasons they do and don't use intelligence. It's also interesting to watch the company performance over time. I can't say that I have statistical direct correlation between use of intelligence and business growth, but anecdotally, there are some very strong examples. Absolutely. So, let's talk just for a quick moment, one more poll, and then we won't do this to you again. But how would you rate your executives at using intelligence? And I have some options on the screen. Hopefully you're able to identify with one of them. Again, if you don't, go ahead and use your question and answer box to let me know what you're thinking or if there's a response that should be added there. We'll leave this up just a short time. We appreciate the fact that people are popping in and jumping in. But this is going to be an interesting point of view right here.
Yep.
I don't think we have a lot of executives on this call. It's really more the people that are producers and workers in this type of intelligence. And it's going to be interesting to see how they feel about the acceptance.
Very much so.
We're just about all voted. I'll just leave it open another 5 or 6 seconds. If you'd like to vote, please go ahead and do so quickly. And we'll close the polls. And as we show the results here, we have a good 10% that are rating their executives at excellent, which is, I think, a testament to the fact that the people that have pushed that button are probably working very hard.
Right.
But I'd say that most of the people in this group that are with us, the fact that you're on the webinar would indicate that you're working hard to accomplish the same results.
Right.
I think it's probably more of a rating of the actual executive's ability, or maybe the nut just hasn't been cracked in your organization to give them the right information at the right time. So 38% at very well, 33% at medium. It's at least good to see that only 10% have voted at the poor level.
Right.
Okay, and that's good.
Well, we had a good portion of our individuals respond. Almost about 3/4 of the individuals on this call responded, which is actually great.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll move forward with the topic, of course. Let's talk about an example of effectiveness. And in fact, we started to mention a little bit about it in the case of the foot soldier in the Army. Okay. Well, let's take that on a much bigger example, one that we might actually be able to digest as a company and as a worker within a company. In the military, you get this very structured hierarchy of generals and different levels of leadership all the way down. But there's also a very coordinated flow of intelligence in the military. Information is coming from the ground level up to the generals. It's going through each of the levels necessary. I'm going to show you one other thing, though, that to me makes a very big difference about intelligence and the evidence of the importance that's given to intelligence. You have, in the military, dedicated intelligence professionals whose job it is to assimilate that information and then get it to the right people at the right time. You have very large budgets and large amounts of personnel that they're dedicated to solely intercepting different types of intelligence or gathering information from photos or understanding communications or different threat assessments and putting that right out where each level can get the information they want to.
It's kind of amazing. When lives are on the line, intelligence is extremely important. And when countries' ability to stay alive is on the line, it's important. And not just important, but crucial, I would say, in order to be able to make correct decisions. You can go to Sun Tzu, Art of War, and all those other things there where it really comes down to helping you understand that, you know what, if you don't have this kind of information, you're really in a world of hurt.
So, again, I'm not saying communication flow is and I appreciate that, Mike. That was actually a very, very good call out. But I'm not saying that it's perfect in the military, but it is an organization where intelligence has probably been refined as much as it is anywhere in the world. Probably more so than in the private sector in most cases. Well, let's take a look at business intelligence here. What does it look like? Well, sometimes the levels aren't quite as well defined, but that's okay. You still have levels of leadership. Some of you might recognize this a little bit more. Some people are more involved than others. Some people are a little bit more close, a little more checked out, whatever the case may be. Intelligence starts to flow, but where does it eventually get to? Is it going to all the right places? Is everybody communicating, and are there processes to bring the intelligence where it needs to be? Is your company allowing some people to have a louder voice than others, whether or not they have any particular expertise in the subject matter?
Sure.
Okay. And then
the bully with juice actually making change without having the intelligence behind it to make that change.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And then the problem that I see also, and I don't know if this is going to change any time in the near future, is the intelligence group, in most companies anyway, doesn't necessarily reside up next to the C-level or the decision makers, but it actually has to jump through a number of hoops to get the information to where it will make the biggest difference. And when that's the case, what do? How do you solve this?
I mean, there's some things, and we're going to go through some little examples of different companies that I've seen and how they solve this. But I think it's very important that intelligence group has a great voice that gets heard at that C-level, SVP level individuals, and that it's disseminated throughout those organizations, throughout those groups. Mm-hmm. And then individuals there that are willing to accept the information too, not just look at it and go, ooh, that's just garbage.
Mm-hmm. So as we go and we think about, by the way, I've got a question over here. Just before we move on to the solution, we're being asked if we'll be able to tell people the percentages of responses on this call and the number of people who voted. I'll be happy to communicate that information back and forth as we get our final reports on the webinar and be able to tell you how many people were saying that. I think that's a very interesting question to try to understand the context of this.
Right.
So let me tell you about a case where a company really got this right. In fact, we'll talk about not only what they did, but we can talk about the results that they claim to have received from this. And then we have another couple of companies that we worked with to just give you some different ideas that might help you. If you're not in a position to enact all of this at once, it's at least a place where you can make a start and see. Now, laying the foundation to make an effective use of intelligence. If your intelligence group is hidden in the backwaters of marketing or sales operations, or maybe it's its own department, but doesn't really have that strong of a voice, you've got to lay the foundation and make the thing start to happen. And what we would recommend is finding a champion that will help you to form a market strategy and insight group. Maybe you don't call it intelligence, maybe you call it market information. It really doesn't matter what the name is, but the point is you've got to find those people within each organization that do have an interest in receiving the intelligence you have.
I think it's very important to have a ongoing meeting with these individuals as well. Even in the establishment of laying your foundation for an intelligence group. And if you've got one at this point in time, maybe it's time to reevaluate where to go. But getting that, what I call a cross-functional team, that all have the ability to share with you their needs and then be able to, again, then disseminate that information and intelligence as it comes back out. Crucially important, and if you're meeting on a pretty consistent basis, once a month, twice a month, something like that, that you can then effectively make change from that intelligence.
Mm-hmm. So as you do this, make sure you have high-level accountability. In other words, are the decision makers buying into this exercise?
Yep.
Are they sponsoring it? Are they willing to give you the resources should that become a question? And if you generate intelligence that answers their questions, do you have a high confidence level that they are going to act upon that intelligence?
Right.
Or are they going to put you on the spinning wheel and let you run until you're tired? Okay.
Make sure when you bring it back, you ask them, how are you going to use this now? What's going to be changed? And then follow up with that and make sure then that that intelligence did make that change, or they made those changes within that organization. Otherwise, the information you've given them is just gobbledygook.
Make sure that over time you review the progress that you're making in your intelligence efforts. In other words, look for that accountability. Find out how people are looking for information, and listen very closely to why or why not things are gaining acceptance in different departments. So maybe the product group loves what you're doing, but the account management team, you never see or hear from them. It's time to find out why and understand how can we make progress. It could be a person progress. It could be a problem with personnel still not accepting things. It could be that there are stronger people in different groups that are championing the intelligence more. But if you're able to at least get some involvement, you should be able to measure the effectiveness of your intelligence on such things as, how often are we using the intelligence to make decisions? How often is it being presented in the right meetings? Who are the people that customarily come to these meetings, and do we have people that are not?
Yep.
Okay. And some companies are able even to go so far as to say, we have made revenue gains of X based on the intelligence that we've gathered and distributed. In fact, I'll tell you the story, one that inspires a little bit of this idea. It's a telecommunications company in the UK. And they started deciding that they didn't understand why their large accounts were defecting. They didn't understand, they couldn't even answer the question of why do people buy from us? Why do people buy from the competition? And I know that everybody feels like they have that answer in some form or fashion.
But the sales guys might think they have it. But there's the marketing and the account management team and all the other areas have it too.
And the good part is they weren't satisfied with the level of confidence that they had. At some point they decided, anecdotally, we don't believe this, or at least we don't have enough faith in it to make company-changing decisions. Let's figure out what we're doing. Well, it's neat because, first of all, important levels of the company started out with the question that they wanted to have the answer.
Right, and or questions.
But they didn't move ahead until they had first laid the foundation for this exercise. In fact, they created a strategy that was from beginning to end based on solving this one problem. Now, of course, there were a lot of benefits that came as side effects of this program, but as they gathered together this group of influencers within each division, they were able to get input on these people and find out what would they use this information for and how would it be most effective. Now, again, you run the risk of paralysis by analysis or good ideas dying in committee, but they were able to take the executive level, make them the champion, get the idea pushed through, and even though it didn't meet everybody's needs 100%, it certainly was enough that everybody would buy in. They gained consensus. They began, well, in this case, a win-loss program with their largest accounts, the top of the pyramid, and at the end of this process, they took the information back through either reports, emails, technology, different ways they chopped the information up, which required nearly as much manpower as gathering the information in the first place.
Evangelizing of the data.
Once that was put into place, people were able to ask questions about the data, understand it, make it their own. They were able to internalize those ideas and create solutions to problems that they didn't understand existed very well before, but now had a very clear vision. The result of this? Increased market share, 15% within the first 24 months of the program.
$700 million.
$700 million of revenue generated over the first 12 months of the program.
Yeah, huge stuff.
Now, and again, it's a dynamic market. There are a million different factors in play. But this company was strong enough to say that because they had gone about this intelligence effort in this manner, they attributed a significant portion of their improvement to the fact that they had gone through a rigorous and strategic intelligence program.
Now, they were very structured in the fact that this group was meeting on a consistent basis as well. It wasn't just once in a while. They were every month. They'd be sitting down and going through the data and the information that was coming back off of their program and really applying those learnings as fast as possible.
Okay. A question from a gentleman asking, I still don't understand how you would measure this. And that's really a very interesting question.
That is tough.
And it really has to come down to what do you want the results of your intelligence efforts to be? I don't know that I necessarily have a one-answer-fits-all solution. I've seen companies that will measure their year-over-year increases in revenue, but they certainly can't attribute that. I don't think that's necessarily a great way to do it. I do see companies that measure the interaction with the data through whatever technology products they may have, be it their blog or their knowledge distribution system or content management system. They're able to measure how many of the right people are touching this information. So in that way, it's still kind of a side effect of effective use, but you're able to at least make the inference that information that is not being used is not going to be effective. Information that is being used often probably has a higher chance of being effective.
One thing you can do to measure that as well is go back to each one of those different heads of the group team here, from account management, sales, and so forth, and say, how many deals or how much revenue of this year do you think came from your efforts with the intelligence programs? And you can come down and start measuring it that way pretty quickly, to sit down and say, okay, this group says they brought in this 3 or 4 more deals. I mean, one of our clients just recently talked about how they had done 30 loss interviews, and over the next year they were able to bring back 7 of those contracts back in the door. Well, that's very measurable for that group to say, this is what we did, and that's kind of more from the sales side. But you can go back to account management and say, now, when you guys are there, how many other projects did we get from a consulting perspective that we went out and brought in the door because of this intelligence? Marketing, what do you think the value of this intelligence was? And you pull that together, and you could have a very strong measuring device of how much you're getting from that. And if you've got that whole team together, I think that's going to be very key to bringing back a strong measurement of, is this going to be effective for us in the future? And is there budget dollars to continue this project going forward?
Well, I think that's very insightful. Willingness to fund projects is a pretty interesting metric.
And hopefully, in a chance from budgetary standpoints, that you're getting budgetary dollars from each one of these areas, because they're all going to get value from it, or should be. And if they're not, then find out why.
I'll tell you an interesting reference we received from one of our healthcare providers in the healthcare space. We're very excited, and one of the comments that he received back was, due to a win-loss program that he had done with Primary Intelligence, and it's not all him, of course, it's the decision makers at this healthcare or health insurance provider. His comment to us was, after we did our win-loss on, 30, 50?
Yeah, I was saying that a little earlier, that they won back 7 of their deals.
7, I mean, that's just fantastic. That's a measure you can, if you want to see ROI in exact measures, I think that's it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, just quickly, the idea here is, steps to effective intelligence. We'll summarize, and then we've got a couple of more experiences.
Kind of case studies here, so we'll chat a little about.
Okay. I think most important is you have to engage with the executive level. And really, it's harsh, but if you can't engage with them, don't bother. It's, do your job, or
they're the ones that are going to be able to get you those are the bullies with juice that really can make change.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Discover their intelligence needs. Do what they need. Okay. Get commitment to the change.
Yep.
If we answer these questions, are you willing to change? Are you willing to make decisions based on this intelligence? Okay. Prioritize your initiatives based on their ROI potential. There sure are a lot of nice-to-knows out there.
Yeah, is it going to move the sales needle? Is it going to move us as an organization? Are we going to save this many millions of dollars because we're doing this? Are we going to bring in this many more deals that would have gone to our competitor because we're going to do this? Those are the kind of things that are really going to keep things rolling forward.
Mm-hmm. Got to make this a long-term program. If not the specific, for example, win-loss or account retention or different types of competitive intelligence you might do. Okay, you might not stay with that exact same research vein all the time, but make sure you have a long-term program in place so that you're not being reactive all the time.
Right.
And I think the biggest frustration and the biggest turnover generally happens in those companies
where,
hey, we just lost to who? Go find out now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, by the time you have the answer, they don't
I don't care. We're in the middle of this other deal or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's make sure that you have this thing rolling on a consistent basis and that people are seeing it on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. That's where you're really going to see the value being generated out of a program like this.
Okay. Make sure you have a commitment to intelligence-driven decision-making. If this starts to slow down, find out why. Find out if you are losing champions. Understand what it is that they need. Make sure you're relevant.
Yep.
If not,
goodbye.
Could be that simple. All right, well, let's talk about a couple of instances where this has happened. In fact, I think we're going to discuss now that gentleman we talked about at the beginning.
We have one of our clients. He was actually a coach at one of our clients, and he had moved around from a couple of different organizations. In fact, he'd even thought about being a sales rep for us for a while, but he wanted to kind of work from an intelligence standpoint in an organization, not necessarily for organizations. And he had left one organization we've been working with, moved on to another, nice size organization that had billions of dollars in revenue. As he got in there, started working with him from a CI perspective, he really found out that, the more he did, the less it was being seen, and the more he talked, the less value was getting out of it, and he just really didn't have the executive level buy-in that he was hoping for. And, he decided to jump ship and go to a smaller organization that had a much stronger strategic focus on how to use competitive intelligence and really make effectiveness. And recently, the organization he landed in, it's about a software manufacturer that's only a $300 million organization instead of a few billion-dollar organization. But at this organization, they're very keen to the idea that competitive intelligence and sales intelligence is crucial to their organization becoming a larger company in the future. He's on a weekly meeting with the C-level individuals where he shares back information that both we capture for them and other information that he captures directly from the sales force, and really brings it. I mean, if you look back at that slide where you've got the intelligence guy right beside the CEO and everything like that, he is right there and gives the chance to have incredible visibility. And they're seeing some great changes taking place, and a program that's getting extremely strong. And as time goes on, they're going to have more and more data that they're going to be able to make some even better inferences off of the information that's there. It's great stuff.
Yeah, but once again, a guy who's not willing to settle, I think that's courageous.
Yeah, I don't know that he's making as much money at the new organization, but he knows that he'll be around a lot longer at that new organization than he would be at an organization that, when the economy gets a little tighter or whatever like that, marketing budgets get cut, and often intelligence areas get cut unless they're being seen as must-have areas. And so he's really, I think, in a good spot for him because he gets that chance to really make change with this organization and help them get some great competitive advantage. This next slide, we're talking about another company that recently, it's a financial brokerage firm that had a little bit of a different sales process than most of our organizations, and they're using win-loss analysis to understand why they're either retaining or losing brokers on their organization. And we started a kind of a pilot project for them, and all of a sudden the information was being shot right up to the CEO, and he latched onto it. And man, this program has expanded, and they are seeing incredible increase in bringing in new brokers to their organization by understanding exactly why they were losing them and keeping them. And it's just been fantastic to see the changes within this organization as that CEO is really, I guess, being fed the information he was seeking for. And I don't think he even knew he was seeking for it until he got it. And he's like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And now those SVPs and everything like that are really latching onto this and making some fantastic change. Again, extremely important, and this information is being shared on a consistent basis back to these guys and ladies, and they're really making some change. And I'm seeing some great revenue increases for it.
Fantastic. Again, the ability to see the value of the intelligence and measure that, I think that's fantastic and fairly progressive.
Yep.
Versus a lot of the companies in his industry.
Yep.
I mean, they're getting the pick of the crop right now in brokers, where before they were having a very big problem.
Well, they can even make decisions on what brokers they want to keep on or not, because they're actually getting to the point where they're starting to have data to tell them which ones they want to and which ones they don't want to pursue to a deeper degree. Mm-hmm. And so it's giving them not just anecdotal feedback of what's going on, but they're getting statistical feedback in the near future that's going to really pinpoint the areas that they can really make change.
I mean, this is intelligence that grows a business.
Yep.
It doesn't have to necessarily be, what is my competitor's next move tomorrow? I mean, this is giving them a sustainable competitive advantage in a market that really
is tough.
Is very tough.
Very tough market.
Okay? I mean, commoditized in many ways.
Very much so.
Okay. So, fantastic. One other example.
Yeah. This is a company that's been around for a long time. They've been doing lots of different things, and about 4.5 years ago, they decided to do similar to what we talked about with the UK telecommunications company that they started to set up a group called their Business Intelligence Group. They have 7 different business units, major business units within the organization. They had a lot of disparate information flowing all back and forth throughout these different business units, and nobody really having a great control over the data and information that was there. And so they created this Business Intelligence Department, and they started doing win-loss and a few other things. And the cool thing is this Business Intelligence Department is actually set right at the highest levels of the organization, right at those SVPs, and there's an SVP on their staff, and it is really high up. And
so are you suggesting in company structure it looks a little bit more like that military
very
diagram?
Very much so, like the military diagram. And then it's over all of these different 7 business units. And so the information that's being desired from these 7 business units is sent back up into this market intelligence area. They're going on out, and it's very much a long-term program. They've been going now about 3.5, 4 years, and they are starting to get some incredible databases of information by business unit, by product segmentation, things like that, that they're able then to go back across some of the historical stuff and really figure out, how is our market changing? What are the needs and desires of our customers and prospects? What are the things we can do tomorrow to be better than we were last week, last month, last year, 4 years ago? What are the key things that our competitors are doing at the same time? Because they captured all that at the same time, and they're really having some fun stuff getting in there. And as it grows, they're going to have more and more of that kind of data to get in there. And they're getting more and more acceptance through these different business units as well. Because to begin with, they were having a rough time, even from those other business units, to build this culture. And it's taken some time, but it's again got extremely high level, right up to the CEO and owner of the company that's coming down and saying, we will do this.
Now, something that you said in that example caught me, and that is, over the past 3 or 4 years, they've been able to build it up to what they want it to be. It was not an overnight change.
Definitely not. And I think you need to go into this the same way. You got to realize that market intelligence and competitive intelligence is a ongoing process if you want it to be done right.
Yeah.
If you want to really see some value out of it.
Well, I remember when we met with this company back in the beginning, when they were first starting to engage us, and we're proud to say that they've engaged us over this entire time, and we've been instrumental. I guess that's a little pat on the back, and I apologize for that. But I remember, I remember being in the room with these people at the beginning of the project, and they had some very high-level ideas, and they were searching for ways to put those into practice. And I remember the look on some of their faces was, some of them were, you could tell the leaders in the room, we're going to do this, we know we can get it done, but there sure were a lot of questions of how and why, and can this actually be done, and how are we going to get the buy-in from
that? You're going to get that all the way through the program as well, especially if you're getting good buy-in from the other organizations. Realize that you got to be flexible enough to be able to morph this program as your company changes and as it grows and it becomes better and stronger in these areas. You've got to have that ability to make those changes, but it's great to have all the buy-in.
Fantastic. Quick question that popped up, and I think it's interesting. We've made the point that most of this starts by getting the buy-in from the top level down, but the point is made that during your story, you mentioned that they didn't even know they were looking for this win-loss information, which is a bit different than our message throughout this. So she says, sometimes you stumble upon a gold mine if shared properly.
Very much so.
Oh, I think that's absolute.
Well, and you're going to find, and I'm sure there's those companies out there right now that aren't getting great amount of buy-in from the top executives. It's just really kind of, you're going to have to play around in the dark, as well as, I think, getting in front of them and asking them what do they like to see and what do they want to see. Capturing that information is going to give you an idea of what right now works for them, and you can start to look for those kind of tools, those kind of ways of capturing data and or presenting data that's actually going to give them that aha moment and say, wow, yeah, I love this stuff.
How many times in a company does the executive group not even know what the initiatives are down in the intelligence group? I mean,
too often that I see anyhow. I mean, a lot of times it's going around that the intelligence group is doing it. Either they're afraid to share it, they don't want to bend anybody's feelings. There might be a bit of information that's going to smack somebody at a higher level upside the head, and they're afraid they're going to go because of that information. They think, don't kill the messenger, but too often they are afraid or have the fear that the messenger is going to get killed. Mm-hmm. I think you got to really be able to establish a way to capture, a way to be accepting of information.
Absolutely. If you are working very hard and but nobody knows what you're doing, it brings back that if a tree falls, I mean, how can anybody possibly appreciate what you're getting to if you're not able to sell at least an overview of what you're doing to someone?
I think it's important to remember, too, in this organization we were just talking about here, remember the individual that we worked with there? Mm-hmm. She had the ability to understand the top-level executives, too, as she was building this organization, this program. So it's really keen to make sure that you know who the bullies with juice are within your organization, and I guess not play them right, but play them right.
Use your assets.
Yes,
absolutely. A champion will get you a lot farther than
yes.
Okay. A question was asked, and we'll get back to the program in a second, but I think it's a good question. And they ask, what other programs besides win-loss have been effective? And I think that's, the answer to that is just huge. We're win-loss and account retention and different forms of primary intelligence.
Voice of the customer kind of interviewing is huge. And with this organization we were just talking about, was their biggest initiative to begin with, was voice of the customer, and your win-loss came in as a part of that. So it wasn't necessarily the end-all and be-all of life was the win-loss. It is part of the program, but their voice of the customer program, which is going out and understanding from those customers, their highest level, the ones that are paying the bills, what are your needs, what are your desires, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, are we being seen as that strategic partner with you, and really getting understanding what's going on in their heads.
And I think that, these are the services that are nearest and dearest to our hearts,
right.
These things that touch in the voice of the customer, and especially primary research. But I think that we would not be fair if we didn't mention the fact that even if your company is predominantly secondary intelligence based, that's okay.
It is.
The ideas we're trying to give here are not just, that you have to use a win-loss program, although we'd love you to, and if you consider primary intelligence.
Just call me up, I'll talk to you about it.
Absolutely. But if you have a question that at the executive level needs to be answered, find the right tool to answer that question, make sure it's presented back, make sure that you have commitment from them that if they're able to receive this information, that they will make decisions based upon it.
Correct. There are wonderful secondary sources that you can capture stuff out there. It's just really understanding. I think the big thing comes back to understand what their needs are. And again, that comes back to understanding everybody's needs, not just the C-level. There's all those different business units that are out there within your organizations, or even lines of business, product development managers, that all have needs. Understanding those needs and being able to compile that into a program that's really going to be able to fit those needs is going to be huge.
So in conclusion, let's talk about, what have we learned today? And hopefully what we've been able to communicate to you is, find a way to judge your intelligence efforts against your ability to strengthen your competitive position. I don't care if it's primary, I don't care if it's secondary. Make sure that the information you are gathering will accomplish one of these three things: strengthening your competitive position, discovering new markets, or bringing new product, service, solutions to market more quickly. You got to get commitment to change, otherwise the information is going to be fun, but...
And it may, you may have the chance that it just comes around and they jump on board or whatever, but seeking that commitment to change right up front gives you the chance to really make some difference and some impact.
Make sure that you're prioritizing correctly. There's a lot of things that can be known. Make sure that, one of the first polls we did was what causes, what it gets in the way of your intelligence being effective. And the biggest, the largest answer selected was a lack of resources. Well, why would you spin your wheels on low ROI initiatives when you could put your efforts towards things that are very beneficial to the company?
As soon as you turn a couple of strong ROI programs, the chance of you getting budget is so much higher.
Absolutely.
And if you can continue to focus on those, you're going to be doing great. If you're going to get mired down with all these low projects or whatever that cost money, and you come on out and they didn't generate a whole lot of revenue, you're going to have a rough time.
In the end, make a difference with your competitive intelligence, and I don't think there's a person on this webcast that doesn't want to. I think most people are looking for a way to try to become more effective. Get your cross-functional groups, get buy-in from champions, get your message put out, find out what will make the difference, and do it. But by all means, make a difference with competitive intelligence.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, as we finish up and do a little bit of post-webcast housekeeping here, we appreciate people. We appreciate your attention. Hope this has been a good use of time today. We'll let you queue up some questions for us, and as we do, we'll answer them in the order they come in as best we can. Again, we've got the question and answer box that you can use to interact with us, and we appreciate the people who have been able to help us direct our comments as we've gone. Finally, if you're interested in the CI Effectiveness Report Card or have any other questions or thoughts, you can contact Mike or me at the information on the screen. Let me take a look at our questions and see if we can answer a couple for people. Looks like we have one. How does the use of CI fit in the strategic planning process? We did not see planning as one of the connection points with CI. Well, I think that's a good question. I'm sorry if we missed that point altogether, but
I think that's the key thing is when you're coming down to those teams that you're getting the questions that everybody has, and then you're actually sitting down with your strategic group and saying, probably even before they get into the strategic management cycle or at the end of the strategic management cycle for a year, then you're sitting down with them and saying, okay, now what do you want to know for this next coming year? Because you've got to be able to set some time to be able to capture that information regardless if it's a secondary, primary, or whatever. And then as you're coming around to that strategic cycle again, that you're bringing in that information and then you're evangelizing it through that strategic planning session. I definitely think it's a huge importance to be there, though.
Okay.
Did that answer the question?
I think it did a pretty good job, and if not, I hope we'll hear back. I've got one of our attendees who is talking and says that they're housed, not necessarily, I don't know exactly where in the company, but her comment is, we're housed in strategic planning.
Sweet.
Well, I mean, that's right there.
Couldn't be any better there.
Nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
But the expectation to me, the unsaid expectation is that those groups that are responsible for strategy turn to the strategic planning group for this type of information.
Right, exactly.
And so in that company...
And or questions they want to know.
Yeah, in that company, it's a natural. We don't move without at least getting intelligence. It doesn't mean that they make every decision based on the intelligence, but at least they're looking to strategic planning, because they understand that some intelligence, more intelligence, needs to be incorporated into their decision-making process. A couple last questions. One of our attendees is asking if there are CI dashboards or KPIs for reporting BI highlights to management. He says he'd like to develop something like this when he presents to senior management.
Huh, that's cool.
Sounds like a question about best practices and what to measure and how to do. That's actually a little outside of my expertise.
I've heard of some other organizations doing it. I'm not sure which tools they're using to create those dashboards, but I know some are doing it in-house, but that would be a good thing to dive into a little bit more.
I think so. I wish I could answer that one better.
We're using some different tools like that from primary intelligence, but not an overall dashboard. We're just using it from different capturing tools like Sales Confidence Index and things like that, which you guys can look into a little bit later.
Here's a thought that came from one of our attendees, and I think it's worthwhile to share. He says, for those responsible for architecting an intelligence or analytics group, I recommend reading a book called Competing on Analytics. Have you heard of that, Mike?
Slightly, but I haven't read it.
It's Harvard Business Review is the publisher,
okay.
And there is a short on their website, Competing on Analytics, and there's also a video podcast which I've watched.
That's right.
I don't know the gentleman that's put this comment in, but he's very insightful. I'm reading the book now at home. I think they have some very good ideas on how to make quantifiable gains in intelligence. And then, of course, you have to go through the process of making sure that they're acted upon. But there are recommendations in their book on making sure that these things happen.
And that's Competing on Analytics?
Competing on Analytics, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a couple that newsfeed.
All right. I think at this point we've spent our hour very well. If there are thoughts that we haven't been able to address, we hope that you'll be willing to reach out to us personally. We enjoy speaking with people that attend our webcasts, and again, we appreciate your time, your willingness to give us an hour of your day. Hopefully this has been of great value to you. It's been very exciting for us to share these thoughts with you.
And we look forward to your feedback on the survey so we can understand how we can improve these down the road.
And we'll go ahead and end our webinar and again say thank you very much.